Ben, you remember that feeling in middle school when all your friends have a sleepover and you find out about it, but you're left out?
Yeah, it's not fun.
That's basically what happened to Donald Trump over Labor Day
Especially after
weekend.
you tariff them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just taking one candy from your friend every time they come over. So when Trump was busy not being dead, apparently, Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted leaders from 20 countries for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, summit. The summit was in Tianjin, China. It's about 90 miles southeast of Beijing. All the coolest countries were there. All the coolest leaders were there. You had Russian President Vladimir Putin, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, all the stands. You had fitness influencer and North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. So those guys add to the kind of like rogues gallery vibe of the event. But both those countries are key arms suppliers for Russia that have been critical to his ability to sustain the war in Ukraine. Remember, North Korea has been a source of artillery shells. Iran gives Putin drones. So it's very significant that they're there militarily. And then Trump then got asked about all of this on Wednesday. He was doing a bilat with the president of Poland. Here's his answer.
I was very surprised. I watched the speech last night. President Xi's a friend of mine. But I thought that the United States should have been mentioned last night during that speech because we helped China. When they did what they did, I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive. But I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching. My relationship with all of them is very good. We're going to find out how good it is over the next week or two.
So I'm not owned, per usual. We'll find out in a week or two. So Ben, again, just to check ourselves, the SCO summit, all summits, it's like stage managed propaganda, right? Like that's part of the point. These guys being together doesn't mean they agree on everything or with each other or coordinating, right? Like India and Pakistan are part of this event. Like they don't agree on a lot of stuff. So we don't want to overreact. But like you, I did feel like there was something different about this event. Yes. The timing, the anger over the tariffs, Modi kind of really leaning into his relationship with the Chinese and U.S. competitors and with Russia. It seemed different to me.
Yeah, first of all, Trump probably is jealous and got on the phone with Pete Hegseth because he probably wished that the U.S. troops in the parade goose-stepped as well as the Chinese troops did.
They were stepping.
But let's put the fascism aside for just a moment here. On the Ukraine point, Kim Jong-un met with Putin, reaffirmed his support for the war in Ukraine. He basically got a big reaffirmation of support for his Ukraine policy. Now compare that to NATO, where they basically have to beg Trump and call him daddy and nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And he still doesn't provide arms to Ukraine.
There's no security guarantee.
He humiliates Zelensky, right? So Trump, basically treats Zelensky like a piece of garbage when he comes to the Oval Office. And then Putin goes, and he's got a bunch of really powerful people validating him. So the message on the war in Ukraine is that this guy, Putin, actually has a stronger alliance behind him than Zelensky does right now. And that's a real thing. This Modi piece is hugely important. Successive U.S. administrations for decades have basically invested in a strategic relationship with India, a defense relationship, a commercial relationship, a economic relationship, a technological relationship, in the hopes that this very big swing country of well over 1 billion people, a massive market, obviously hugely strategically located on the Indian Ocean there, would tilt in the direction of what used to be the world's democracies, the U.S. and Europe. Well, this was Modi, not being shy at all in response to Trump treating him like garbage. I mean, this is just a rule of human behavior. Some people think foreign policy is really complicated. Sometimes it's not. If you treat someone like shit, they're going to cozy up to your adversaries.
Right.
And there's Modi signaling, hey, I'm actually moving in the direction of this team, not your team. And that is a massive tectonic shift if that is something that is actually going to go forward.
And we'll explain why, because it's way dumber than you think.
Yeah, it is. It couldn't be dumber. And so we have to take this very seriously. And the other problem, and this is why we really encourage you to continue to join us every week, is the U.S. political and media ecosystem does not seem to be able to hold Trump accountable for any of this. If this kind of thing had happened when Barack Obama was president, or Joe Biden was president, or a normie Republican, there would be like a freak out about how we've squandered our leadership in the world.
The Fox News chyrons,
Fox News would be
the humiliation.
Fox News would be playing this B-roll in a loop, right? But for whatever reason, Trump's utter failure on Ukraine diplomacy, utter failure geopolitically, his tough talk with China and no follow through, like it doesn't stick to him because nobody has any expectation for him. But we're going to look back 20 years from now and be like, wow, that's pretty amazing that this guy came in and basically in a few months, ceded all semblance of U.S. leadership. Whatever you think of U.S. leadership, the one thing that's clear is the rest of the world is no longer on board with it.
Yeah, but before we get to the Modi thing, did you see that there was like a hot mic moment that someone kind of clipped and shared on Twitter this morning? It was like CCTV in Beijing. They captured Putin and Xi talking, and they were talking about living to be 150 because you can get like synthetic organs or organ transplants. And it's like, I've often wondered what Xi and Putin might talk about, and this perfectly tracks.
Apparently, it's the same thing that people are talking about, like the tech bros at
Peter Thiel.
first camp at Burning Man.
Yeah.
But I just say that the other thing I just want to say is that Trump always says this stuff like Xi does not like him.
He doesn't.
None of those people like him.
No.
And there's something really sad and pathetic about the fact that these people are literally coming together with the express purpose of trying to humiliate Trump. And he's still like, they like me. Xi likes me. I like them. Guess what? Kim Jong-un doesn't like you. Narendra Modi doesn't like you. Xi Jinping doesn't like you.
Iranians don't like you.
Yeah, they don't like Trump. And it's kind of very strange that because he's constantly surrounded by sycophants, that he assumes that these other world leaders feel the same way about him that, Stephen Miller does.
Right,
It's
exactly.
just not the case.
Exactly. So as you mentioned, the unraveling of the Trump-Modi relationship, the U.S.-India relationship, is fascinating and really, really important. And just for context, every president for decades has invested a lot of time and attention into the U.S.-India relationship because it's been obvious for decades that India was going to be an economic powerhouse. It was true for Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Trump. And Trump and Modi, they did seem to get particularly close. They had sort of a shared, populist authoritarian. Yes, exactly. Trump spoke at that Howdy Modi rally in Texas. Remember that? It was this huge rally in I think Houston in 2019. And Trump was just on stage the whole time, just hanging out. Modi endorsed Trump in 2020. But in recent weeks, whatever goodwill had been built up seems to have just gone away. Over the weekend, the New York Times kind of detailed the backstory of that unraveling. A lot of it stems from Trump trying to take credit for a ceasefire deal between India and Pakistan. So listeners probably remember back in May, we covered this. There was a brief but very serious armed conflict between India and Pakistan. It included airstrikes by the Indian military deep into Pakistani territory. Pakistan attacked Indian military bases. There was a drone battle. It was really serious, scary stuff. But after 4 days, India and Pakistan's military heads, they got on the phone, they brokered a ceasefire. But right as they're deciding to announce it, Trump front runs the announcement and takes credit for it. And that claim was bullshit, but the Pakistanis were like, whatever.
They loved it. Yeah.
We're like, we'll play along.
Because it made them this equal partner to the Indians.
Exactly.
And made it look like America was on their side.
Exactly. And so the Pakistanis even put forward Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And then clearly someone on Trump's team must have told him, hey, India's not happy about you taking credit for this ceasefire. But it didn't slow him down. And according to the Times, it got to the point where Trump even called Modi directly and on the phone suggested that India should nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize, which, geopolitics aside, Ben, it's just insane. Imagine on a human level, there's two people on this phone call. Both of them know that Trump absolutely did not broker this ceasefire, let alone fully resolve the conflict between India and Pakistan. But Trump is pushing Modi to give him the Nobel Peace Prize or nominate him. It's just it's an insane thing to do, just on a human level. So Modi says no. Fast forward to last week. Things are now so bad that Trump has slapped a 50% tariff on India. And on Labor Day weekend, Trump was complaining that our relationship with India is, quote, a totally one-sided disaster. So, while Modi was hanging out in China, Trump was just whining about him on Twitter. And in parallel, Xi Jinping saw this growing fissure between the U.S. and India. He decided to start some quiet outreach to the Indian government. Bloomberg News reported that Xi sent India a letter that was received well, that led to more dialogue and visits, and a thawing of tensions that had been quite bad since this violent border dispute back in 2020, which we covered at the time too. It was these guys fighting at high altitude. 20 Indian soldiers died. Remember there were reports of them hitting each other with baseball bats and shit.
It wasn't good.
It was crazy. Anyway, so it was a very deep wound that was difficult to heal between these two countries. It took 5 years, but Donald Trump made it happen. So thanks for that. So Ben, do you just want to give some context and help explain to listeners why Trump claiming that he brokered this ceasefire was so enraging to Modi, and then just the broader stakes of this rupture?
Yeah, so you have to remember, right? I mean, India and Pakistan are, dating back to the partition of India, which led to over 1 million deaths as Muslims moved to Pakistan and Hindus moved to India. They've basically been enemies ever since then, and Kashmir has been the flashpoint. They both claim this territory as their own. And they've never been able to resolve it, and they've fought multiple wars over it. And they all kind of follow a similar pattern where there's a flare-up, there's an exchange of violence for a period of days, sometimes weeks, and then it kind of peters out because, especially since they both obtained nuclear weapons in the 90s, you don't want to go too far over the precipice here. So there's a deeply unresolved issue here of Kashmir and deep antagonism between India and Pakistan that is kind of central to their national identities as well. This is not just like a side dispute. This is kind of core to their identities.
And it's not just the leaders. Like, I remember you and I were both watching Indian TV during this period, and the bloodlust for war on every channel was, it's kind of shocking. It's like Fox News pre-Iraq war on steroids.
Well, and you'll remember, because there was a pretty horrific terrorist attack on a bunch of Indian tourists in Kashmir. And so there was a horrible terrorist attack that precipitated the hostilities that then kind of reached the point where they were going to de-escalate. And literally, it doesn't seem like anything happened other than like Marco Rubio lobbing in the routine phone calls that any U.S. secretary. I mean, if
doing the basics.
If Joe Biden was president, if Barack Obama was president, if Bill Clinton was president, if George Bush was president, the U.S. would have done the exact same thing and would not have taken any credit, because to do that would be to humiliate India, because India is the bigger and stronger power. So for them, they're the ones climbing down, which was the right thing to do, but they're the ones climbing down without having, like, quote unquote, defeated Pakistan. And so for Trump to come in, it makes India, which is a very proud country of over 1 billion people, feel humiliated if it's like they're in the same weight class as Pakistan and the U.S. told them to stop it and Trump should get a Nobel Peace Prize. It is absolutely humiliating to Modi that Trump did that. It was a big issue in Indian politics. It was a big issue in the Indian media, like you said. Like the people that usually like Modi, the kind of MAGA of India, they were pissed about it. And the more Trump talked about it, the Pakistanis were basically trolling India when they're nominating Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. So Trump doesn't even understand that this isn't just an inconvenience to Modi. This is like totally humiliating. It totally offends the national sensibility. Whatever you think. By the way, I don't like this kind of antagonism that they have for Pakistan and vice versa, but it is what it is. And so he completely stepped in it, and purely because of his ego and vanity, and because of something that everybody knows isn't true, he didn't broker anything. No. Like, there's no agreement. There's not a piece of paper. There's nothing that the U.S. did other than make the routine diplomatic phone calls. But because the whole world has to play along with this Nobel Peace Prize fiction, he's putting at risk a relationship with a country of well over 1 billion people. The other thing I'd say is, Tommy, I was in meetings with Modi in the late Obama years. This is a man with a deep, deep skepticism of China. He's worried about China. They're a big neighbor. They have a bigger economy. He's been trying to catch up to their economy and hasn't been able to do it. They've had these border disputes. His natural inclination is actually to get closer to the U.S., to get closer to Europe, to get closer to the Gulf Arabs. And we're literally shoving him in the direction of China. That's how big of a self-own this is. And again, like, it's amazing that this is kind of a secondary story that, basically pissing off like a hugely strategic country. One political point I want to make, in front of the pod, Rokan has made this point. Indian Americans have been trending conservative, right? A lot of these people bought into the Trump-Modi bromance.
Yep.
They kind of like the Hindu nationalism, and they kind of want to be a part of some MAGA-adjacent space here. Well, I hope you have some buyer's remorse if you thought that Trump had some sincere desire to improve U.S.-Indian relations, because he doesn't. So, again, this is not a straight politics show, but every vote matters, and I would hope that there are people in the Indian American community going to their Trump-curious or Trump-supporting family and saying, what the fuck? This is the wrong bet, guys.